Pearse's position on education in Ireland more or less changed with his development between being an almost exclusively cultural nationalist and then a more radical Republican nationalist, shall we say, from the period of about 1913 onwards. What happens before the watershed year, shall we say, of 1912, is that he has great optimism that through educational processes alone, by reviving the Irish language, by enthusing people about their own historical traditions, that the Irish can be, if you like, become as true to their identity as they need be within a framework of home rule. And after all, it is, we must remark that Pearse did appear on a platform with John Redmond, the leader of the Home Rule Party, as late as March 1912. But then things begin to change very, very quickly indeed. And it's partly to do with the fact that, having started his own school project in this great optimistic sense that here he was going to show how it was done, others would take up the lead, and we would get this kind of flowering of an educational project and of bilingualism across the country. That's not quite what happened to Pearse. The practical realities of running a school was that it was also sent in as a limited company. And by 1912 it had got into a very severe financial crisis, and Pearse was quite stressed financially at this stage. So he was desperately trying to save his school. And this, in a sense, suggested to him, I suppose, a wider political reality. After all, for some of the scholarships that the boys were reliant upon, they were reliant upon the Department of Education. The Department of Education was the British-influenced, British-run educational system in Ireland. And this was, in a sense, leads Pearse, as he becomes more radical in his nationalist and republican thinking, to believe that the problem cannot be overcome on purely on the basis of culture, that are cultural projects, that it's going to require changing the whole framework of British political influence in Ireland. And that therefore leads to his much more radical take on the British educational system in a series of short essays that he writes between 1913 and 16, which is collected together into The Murder Machine. And The Murder Machine says it all, really. It basically says that the Irish educational system in Ireland is murdering Irish culture, and that in order to remove this factor we have to achieve political freedom. So that's the politicised Pearse, with his now radical vision of what is needed to enable Irish education.